Hello, hello. Some of you I know. I'm Gabriele from Greencraft Gardens in Grinvad, and I volunteered to do a presentation here today. I've been seed saving for quite a while, but I haven't, like our farm does grow vegetables, not seeds as such, but we do a little bit. It's on my plan to do more of it. So I'm going to talk to you today about annuals, how to save seeds from some annuals. Have you all gardened? Are you all gardeners? Yep. Have you saved seeds from your annuals? A little bit? Have you saved seeds? You're new to it?
I don't garden.
You don't garden? You just want to learn about it? So, first of all, annuals are basically plants that grow the first season into the fruit and into the seed. It all happens in one season, in one summer. So most of them are fairly easy to take seeds off. So I'll talk today about, first of all, maybe like peas and beans. So most peas and beans, the flowers are not that easy cross-pollinated. They can a little bit by insects, but they don't do it very readily. But you should always maybe just seed save one variety. It's always safer than having, say, many different beans together and want to save the seeds of them, or peas. So if you decide to grow a certain pea or bean, just grow, you have to grow enough of it to actually get a bit of diversity in your crop. So say a little row of 10 feet. That's little for me. Maybe for a home garden it's lots. Or, I mean, even if you had something at least like 10 plants of it. And when you grow them early in the season, and then let them go to seed and let them ripen on the plant as much as possible. But say peas will, if you leave them too long on there, they split open and they fall out. Same with beans, they could do that too. So you want to maybe when they get really fat and like kind of looking a little bit more yellowish, not as green, then take them in and let them dry in a shed out of the sun. Usually, well, you can leave them in the sun. Beans and peas would be fine with that. And then make sure that you label them. You can shell them later on in the season, in the winter, right? You don't have to shell them right away. You can let them just dry up really nice and then keep them in a dry, cool space. The beans, like if you have more varieties that you want to save, just grow some other things in between, like flowers. So you grow taller flowers in between the beans, or you can grow just some vegetables other vegetables in between. And as long as you have maybe like about, they say 25 feet distance if you didn't have other things growing, but if you have flowers and stuff growing in between, the insects will go to the flowers and not go on to the next bean, right? So then you could, in a smaller garden, grow more varieties if you like. And what I would recommend is also, say you want to eat some of your crop, you don't want to just seed save. So do your row so far that you just harvest that for eating, but say a third of your row you leave just for seed saving and don't touch it. Because if you pick and say, oh, the last ones I leave for seed, they might not ripen anymore properly. So it's better to actually leave. Also the first flowers, the first seeds that happen are the stronger ones. The later ones in the season are not as strong.
So the ones you leave later and you miss if you're picking beans are not the best seeds.
Not necessarily, yes. But if they were left from the beginning and you had forgotten to pick that one, then that would be one from the first ones. So it's probably better to just take a little patch, like say you had a few rows, and you say, the end part of my rows I leave. I do not touch. So same with the peas. That is usually better than starting to pick and then go, oh, I have some leftover. But you can still keep the seed. I mean, it's fun. You know, you just keep some seeds and see if it works.
What about water on the plants when you're trying to let them go? Like, does it in the fall, or if it's a really wet summer, do you have to be concerned?
Yeah, you want to give your plants enough water so they can really develop properly. So for seed growing, actually the best thing is the trickle irrigation. Because the less you have on your plant, the better, right? Because you don't want to get everything like the seed pods wet. Also, some seeds you need to stake, like the peas, you need a fence. The beans, they're pretty easy, but like pole beans, you need a fence. So now, say you save seeds from lettuce, for example. You can let your lettuce grow. Lettuce is self-pollinating. So they're tiny little sunflower, not sunflower, dandelion, like little dandelion heads on a lettuce. So basically, you plant your lettuce early in the spring, the ones you like, and you let them grow to seed, so they will kind of open up and make a seed stalk, and then have lots of little dandelion type flowers on, and they do not ripen all at once. So you have the first ones ripening, and then some more ripening, and some more ripening. So you could also lose some seeds because some fall off and some are not ripe. So what we find, if you have a big bucket or a Rubbermaid tote, you can just bend the head down and shake the seeds out, and then let them sit up again, and then some more can ripen, and you can do that again. Or at a certain time, you can just cut the whole seed stalk off and let it just dry out and ripen on the plant a little bit more.
Gabriele, we had 3 different types of green beans that we grew last year. We didn't save seeds, but ours, we have limited space. But we had the 3 types, and there's just enough space between the 3 rows to walk in between them. If we had saved seeds with them that close together, would we have some funny looking beans this year? Would they have cross-pollinated?
They can, but they're not so easily do that. So you could be fine, and they were all green, all different green beans.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, so you might just have your own green bean happening. That's how seed breeding happens too,
so
right?
Not like squash where they'll totally.
No, we're going to go into squash in a moment. So yeah, so lettuce is really easy. Beans and peas are fairly easy because really they don't cross very readily. The only one is like the scarlet runner beans. They do cross. So if you have other pole beans, you don't want to have scarlet runners with them, because the scarlet runners, they will cross with the other beans. And so for lettuce, most lettuce is actually also open pollinated. There's not many hybrid lettuce around. Do you know what a hybrid is, an open pollinated plant?
Go ahead, tell them.
Yeah, because if you want to save seeds, you need an open pollinated seed, or heritage, or heirloom seeds. And these seeds are basically true to type. They will come back. They're being grown for many, many generations, and they come back as such plant. If you have a hybrid, they can still be grown, but a hybrid is a cross or a double cross of the same kind of, say, bean, and then it makes a hybrid bean. But there's not many hybrid beans either. There's not many hybrid peas on the market. Most of it is open pollinated, actually. And same with the lettuces. And lettuce doesn't cross easy, or they say doesn't cross. Everything could maybe cross in its own family. So same thing, you grow some lettuce on one part of your garden and some on the other part, and you can still keep both the seed. The nice thing with lettuce is you can put the seed, basically let them reseed themselves, and then you have early on little lettuce growing, and they're usually so much tougher, right? Because your own seed is just more suited to your, like it adapts to your soil, to your garden. You have all your little lettuce, and you can take these little lettuce and transplant them, or just cut them and eat them, right? So it's really nice to have. So, so really most lettuce is not a hybrid or doesn't cross. Now for squash, I brought some squashes here. This is actually not a squash, this is a gourd. Squashes have like 4 families. And we're getting this at the seed room right now. People bring us squash and they go like, yeah, it was a Hubbard squash, I took the seed out. But where was this Hubbard squash grown with what other squash together? So basically there is 4 different major groups, but say really 3 major ones. And the Pepo, Cucurbita pepo, is the family usually has prickly stems. So this is a spaghetti squash that belongs to that family. And you can pass it around. The stem is very prickly, and it is also very ribbed. And the plant is prickly. So which others are like that? Zucchinis, delicata squash, spaghetti, some pumpkins, and they all belong to that same big family. And if you grow them all together, you're going to get funny crosses. You get maybe a spaghetti squash zucchini, or one bad one is gourds. Well, this is actually a birdhouse gourd. They belong to a totally different family. But the regular little ornamental gourds, they are very bitter, and they cross with any zucchini, spaghetti squash, delicata squash, and then the seed you get is bitter most of the time and not really good. You can't eat it. So, or sometimes zucchinis and pumpkins will cross, and you have a greenish pumpkin that never turns orange or whatever, right? They're like in a different, they're still edible, but with gourds, so don't grow gourds with your zucchinis and spaghetti squash. And then there is the Cucurbita maxima, if I got that right, yeah, maxima. They are all the Hubbard types, and they have really thick stems, and if you look at it, they are not prickly at all. And they are, we have like the Hubbard squash belongs to that, or a red curry squash, or a butter cup. They're dark with a little cup underneath. They all belong to that family, and they will cross with each other. And then we have, so these squashes do not cross with a gourd. So they're not the same. So if you grow these squashes in gourds, they will not cross. And if you grow these squashes with other of their own type, usually you're going to have a nice squash. It's just going to be a different cross, but they're not going to be not edible, right? So they're still going to be good to eat. Also, the big giant Pacific giant pumpkin belongs to that squash family. So if you want to grow a giant pumpkin, and you grow these Hubbard type squashes with it, then your giant pumpkin seeds will maybe be a cross, or vice versa. So they belong to the same family. So then we have the Cucurbita moschata, and these are the butternuts. And there's not many in that family. So basically butternuts, and then there is Musc de Provence, is like a round one. Their stems are a bit similar to the spaghetti, but not as prickly. And these, so butternuts you could grow, for example, now, if you wanted to grow different squash in your garden and save the seeds, then grow, say, one Hubbard type, or in that family, grow maybe a zucchini and grow a butternut. And if you have these three, they're not in the same family, so they wouldn't cross. So we, for example, have a pumpkin patch, and we have all our zucchinis and all our squashes in the same area. So all our things cross, because it's all too many different families or same families grown together that will cross. So you really have to separate them. Cucumbers don't cross with squashes. So, but for our cucumbers, for example, I will grow my pickling cucumbers for seed in a total separate area from all our other pickling cucumbers, because we grow many different varieties, and just leave them. I just plant a whole bed, and I will not look at them anymore. And then let them really get big and yellow, and then you take the seeds out. For like cucumbers, you have to do the same as for tomatoes and ferment them, because they have a jelly-like coating around the seed, and you put them all in a bucket with water and let them ferment, and then it breaks down that jelly coating. And also usually your not viable seeds will be on the top, and the heavy seeds will be on the bottom, and you drain it all out. It's a little stinky, and let them dry on cookie sheets or, yeah. So I brought this one along because this is a birdhouse gourd, and I wanted to just demonstrate what's a viable seed. And I thought, oh goody, we could maybe have seeds from these and give them to people. But when you look in your catalogs and when you research what plants you have a time to maturity date, right? And these are 120 days, but it's a long time. I do get them ripe, so I have a gourd to do something with, but not the seed. They didn't get ripe enough on the plant. So most of your squashes actually need, or gourds, they need to really ripen enough on the plant. And when you see the seeds, if you pinch them, they're totally hollow. They're not, there's nothing, they're not, and then you know they're no good. If they were a good seed, they would actually be firm inside. So even with your squash seeds, if your squash seeds are a little hollow feeling, they're probably not really viable. Yeah, you can. Yeah, they make a sound. And the birdhouse gourds are actually not a gourd. They're not even at all in that same family. So you could grow other gourds and these ones too together if you wanted. So yeah, so your seeds, when you harvest your seeds, you want your plant to be really mature, really ripe. And say if you had spaghetti squashes that were maybe not the right yellow, they would be staying green, then they would probably be not ripe enough. You want them the color you want, be really ripe. You can even, with all the squashes, wait till now to harvest the seed. You don't have to do that in the fall. You can do it after storing them. But it's also good to maybe pick the best looking from a plant, right? If you were selecting now and you had enough to select from, you want to select the ones that are choice, that you think that's what I like, or that they really taste good. You might want to eat one and see how good they are, right? But I mean, they can be different from season to season, because depending on sunshine and the growing season, sometimes they're sweeter than other years. So yeah. So you want them really nice and ripe. Same with your tomato seeds. Have you taken tomato seeds? No? So tomato seeds, you want them also to, like the tomatoes, to be nice and ripe. And then take the nicest ones of your plant. And I make tomato sauce and keep seeds. So what I do, I cut them in half, I squish out the seeds into a little container that I label. so I know what's in there. And then the same thing like with the cucumbers, you let them ferment. You can put a little water in if it's not very juicy, and let them sit for 3 or 4 days on your counter. They get a little mold happening, and then you take, once that happens, basically it eats up a bit the jellyish part around it, and then you wash them, and then you dry them, and I dry them usually on a plate. I put my label back on the plate, so I know what they are, and then once they're nice and dry, I just package them up or put them in a container, cool and dry. Tomato seeds keep quite a long time too, like beans and peas too, like you can keep them for, like beans and peas probably really viable for 5 years. Tomatoes can be even older, even up to 7 years. I had some really old ones, there's still some of them germinated. So, but then other seeds won't last that long, like lettuce, 3 years, then the germination goes down. So we do a little bit of germination tests, see if they germinate. But with the tomatoes, when I squish them out, the rest what I squish out, I use in my sauce then, cut it up and make a sauce. So they're not wasted. The jellyish part around your tomato is actually keeping the tomato seed from sprouting in the tomato, because it's actually a moist environment, maybe even warm outside, right? So they would germinate, but this jellyish coating is actually prohibiting the germination. So when we ferment it, that breaks it down, and it's not there anymore, and then they will germinate better. It also helps your, like if you do the fermenting, it also kills some viruses and diseases. So that's why you do it on the tomatoes and on cucumbers. Peppers are fairly easy. They are very self-pollinating plants. So peppers you can, like I said, you best always to separate them a bit. But in a home garden, sometimes that doesn't work. Peppers could cross with a hot one. So if you have sweet ones and hot ones, you might not. You might want to really separate them. But they're really easy. Once a pepper is really red, like ripe, all peppers will actually turn red. Even if they're green peppers, you buy green peppers, they will eventually turn red to be ripe. Or if they're a colored pepper, they might turn a brownish color or very purplish. And you can, once they're really ripe, and even if they get shrivelly, then you can open them up and take the seeds out. And if their seeds are nice and plump and formed, they'll be fine. And so their peppers are pretty easy one to grow too. So, do you have any questions for me?
Not exactly on seed saving, but a couple of years ago, we had some turnip seeds left over from the previous season. They were commercial.
Mm-hmm.
They were from Vernon. And we had basically had a crop failure. They would not germinate. My first thought was maybe we put them in too early, but you know, turnips are pretty hardy.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that just a matter that those seeds were just past their date? Was that?
It could be. It could be that they're really not, they were not viable anymore, maybe before they were, like the year before you grew them.
We grew them fine the year before. We
Yeah.
had some left over and put them in again.
Yeah.
And buy more. And
They just did not come. Sometimes we have things happen in the soil, like maybe they sprout a little bit and then it gets too wet and they start rotting, or there can be things happening that you have really poor germination. We had really poor germination last year with many crops because we had it kind of nice and then it got too hot, too dry, too quick. And then maybe you had little sprouts so they dried out because they didn't get watered and your crop's not there. So some things like that can happen too.
yeah, everything else germinated. All the early stuff germinated
Mm-hmm.
fine. Just
Yeah,
that one.
just so it could be too old then. They passed at one point where they don't grow good anymore. Like for example, parsnip seeds, 1 year. The second year, you know, you feel bad because you didn't seed them all, and then you go, oh, I'll save them for next year. But it's almost a waste because they don't come very good at all anymore. So parsnip seeds are not very long-lived. Some other seeds like some of the cabbages, yes, cabbage family like rutabagas, and they won't germinate that well the next season. But then I had it happen when you keep your own seed, and if it's good, healthy seed, sometimes it surprises you how long it's viable. And they're gonna get actually better suited to your microclimate in your garden or in your area. And you might have just superior seed compared to when we buy it, even from Vernon, it probably comes from somewhere else in the world where some seed buyer buys all these seeds from somebody that grew them in California. And it's such a different climate. We get seeds when we buy the seeds for our farm, and they, even if they come from a local seed company, they buy them from somewhere else. Yeah, and sometimes it says origin Japan, origin Holland, yeah, or from the States. A lot of seeds are grown in the States. So yeah, so if you can do more seed saving right here in your own area, you will eventually have a lot better seed, and it happens fairly fast. Yeah, because they seem to be adapting fairly quickly to your area. And then, have any more questions?
I have another one. It's not exactly seeds, but I've been trying to
Yeah.
find somebody to give me an answer to this one. We have trouble every year with zucchini getting like a gray mold all over the leaves of the things.
Mm-hmm.
We tried watering more, watering them less. We tried growing them in pots. Doesn't seem to matter.
Like a mildew kind of, yeah.
What,
It's probably just there, and then when the conditions happen right, it just appears. And many squashes and zucchinis at a certain time in your growing season, they can get it. And I would say on our farm we rotate, but we rotate pretty far. In a home garden, you can't rotate it that far, right? So yeah, so to growing them in a different spot again, you probably tried that. Yeah, usually less water is better, but they don't want to be under stress. So any stress will stress a plant and make them more susceptible to a disease or to bugs, because bugs basically hear when somebody's stressed, and then they go and eat that one.
Can you cut off some of the leaves to give it more air in there? Or
Yeah, you could do a little bit.
The stems, you're not damaging the plant. When you
Yeah,
cut off
you could do a little bit, but I wouldn't do too much of that. But same thing, trickle irrigation, so they have even watering, but not on the leaves. Warmer, so that they have maybe a plastic mulch or something, so they're just warmer, or air circulation, so not too many other plants around it, so that they have more air.
do they need to be in hills?
You can, but what happens, like last year we planted things in hills and it wasn't good, because it was so dry, so hot, that in the hill it dried out too much and we could not keep enough water in it. So yes.
Yeah, because we tried last year to
And then-
put them in big pots, because we got more room in the yard with pots, but the pots would dry out so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just didn't work.
Too hard, yeah. So then it's stressed. Then your plant is stressed, and then these things are just there. Like there is mildew around, there is all kinds of things there, and they just happen to show up when your plant gets stressed. So and if you plant them happier, you can keep your plants with fertilizing them properly, so they have the nutrition, that they don't lack any nutrients, or water, air, warmth, whatever they want. The healthier they are, the less they get a disease.
But trickling is critically
It's
important.
yeah,
rather than-
trickle irrigation is better. If you overhead spray them, you get too much moisture and sitting on them. And then what we get cool nights. So the cool night is not so good for them either, right? It cools off too much for some of these plants. So, and then they stay wet to moist, and they get it.
We've tried soaker hoses. It doesn't seem to do the trick. Is there like, you have to invest in pipes that have little holes in them? Is that what you mean by trickler?
Yeah, what we have is like basically, yeah, a line, and then every foot there's a little hole. And so there's only that little hole goes to that one plant. Yeah, so that there is not too much water, because we don't want to get everything watered like so much.
Right.
So
Makes
with
sense.
trickle, do you turn the water on once in a while, or you leave it on all the time, or how do you?
We turn it on at certain times. It's not on all the time. Yeah.
How can you measure when you've got like your inch a week or whatever it is you're hoping for? You just know it after a while?
Yeah, there is a measure. There is calculations you can do, kind of how much you need to leave it on to make for so many 100 feet to get that much water out. And then a little bit, I think, depends on the heat, how hot the days are and stuff. Might have to have more water for
home
longer.
gardens, you can go up like we are in Sound, you go to Nico's, you can buy these little things with lights on them. You stick it in the garden, it will start flashing red.
When you know, you can get really sophisticated. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
expensive and, you know.
I think my time's over. So I hope I gave you some information. Yeah. We can find some seeds. Yes, find some seeds.
Gabriele,
Yes.
we've dried some seeds this year. Out of one of those Turk's head squashes.
Mm-hmm.
Linda found an interesting thing to do with it. We didn't save them to plant. She toasted them.
Nice.
Kids had fun in the oven. The grandkids had a ball.
Yeah, yeah.
Getting the seeds out. They were delicious.
Yeah, and you can do that with many squash seeds actually. They can all pumpkin and squashes, you could do that too. Some have a little more harder shells than others, but yeah. All right. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay.